Hey YouTube, this is the most passionate show on the internet about taxes. That's right, taxes. Today we're answering the question, what if my spouse owes the IRS? And we're going to answer that so you can stress a little bit less about tax issues and sleep better at night. So stick around and we'll answer that question in under 2 minutes. Or we'll get to the answer of that question in under 2 minutes. My name is Jared, and this is my YouTube show about taxes, debt, personal finance, and sometimes about just random life stuff. I answer people's questions about tax issues and occasionally give away free stuff along with free information that, if you were going to try to get from a tax advisor, might cost you $300, $400, $500, depending on where you are, $1,000, just to sit down with them and talk about it. And we give that away for free on here. And we also occasionally bring on industry experts. We've got some great people in the pipeline that I'm thinking about who specialize in different areas related to this stuff. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. I'm a tax advisor personally. And I kind of stumbled into my specialty area, which is helping people who are kind of on the wrong side of the IRS, usually people who kind of have tax assessments against them that they either haven't paid or can't pay, or maybe incorrect assessments, that kind of thing. I stumbled into that, like I said a second ago, and I've said in other episodes, because of some stuff that some people that I was close to went through. And I kind of saw the effect that had on their lives. And I had done a little bit of this work, but it really made me realize how important it was to have specialists in this area who really knew what they were doing. So it's kind of out of seeing that pain and wanting to help relieve it that I ended up kind of in the specialty I am in now. Okay, so now on this show, we give out good information because it's been my experience there's a lot of bad information online. Not everyone can afford a professional, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to hire one either if, it's a $200 issue. So we're just trying to arm citizens and taxpayers with the information they need to be able to kind of stand up for themselves. The IRS is one of the most powerful governmental organizations out there. They can empty your bank account, they can garnish your wages, and they can do most of that without even a court order. So there's a lot of power there, and it's a highly technical area of law, and it's really easy for people to make mistakes, even when they're trying to do the right thing. So this show is about kind of giving a little bit of power back to the little guy, in case, he ends up running into an issue that, he needs a little bit of help with. So today's question is, what if my spouse owes the IRS? So that can get complicated, like a lot of this stuff. And the short answer is that if you're married filing jointly and your spouse owes the IRS, more than likely what's going to happen is the IRS is going to take part of your refund, all of your refund, including their part, is where I was going with that, and apply it to the spouse's past due tax debt. So when you file married filing jointly, what happens is you basically sign one return, and the IRS treats you as basically one person for that return. So if your spouse owes past taxes, they'll take that money and pay it towards your spouse's debt. Also, potentially other creditors who have access to those treasury accounts that the IRS gets the money from, they can potentially take some of that too. And that's going to get into a little bit of state law in particular and some other subject areas I'm not going to go into about how to deal with that. Maybe we'll have somebody on eventually who can talk about that, but my guess is it's going to be very state specific. Now, you might be thinking, that's crap. And there are solutions for that. You can file married filing separately if you're married, and that'll solve that problem. You can also do what's called an injured spouse allocation, and that's Form 8379. And basically what it does is it figures out how much of the withholding in that treasury account that's going on your joint returns, how much of that is yours and how much of that is your spouse's, and how much of the tax due is each of yours. So basically figures out a percentage of the total tax due and a percentage of the total income. Then it figures how much goes to each spouse, and then it will refund, basically give you a refund of the amount over whatever your individual tax due is up to your withholding. So they'll still take your spouse's refund part, but they won't take yours if you fill that out. And that's Form 8379. It's an injured spouse allocation. For some people, it's super simple. For some people, it's not, depending on the complexity of your finances and what types of income sources you have. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. Sometimes it can be really easy, and sometimes it can appear really easy and then get really complicated really quick. But that completely depends on kind of your individual tax situation. So I can't tell people what that is without looking at their return, if it's going to be easy or hard. And sometimes other stuff just pops up. So that's to answer that question. If your spouse owes the IRS, or even potentially owes other people, but that's not so much my area of practice, that tax refund, amounts can be taken out of it to satisfy their tax debt, assuming you're married filing jointly. If you are, you can file that injured spouse allocation, and that'll help you get some of your refund money back, but not necessarily theirs. And that's the answer to today's question. The only other thing actually that will make that a little bit more complicated is if you live in a community property state. We'll talk about those eventually, but California is a community property state. They're basically states that say, once the marriage starts, and it varies state by state, so this is a broad oversimplification. Once that marriage starts, everything is kind of jointly held. And that's not always true in other states, but in community property states it is. California is an example. I believe Washington is. And there's a few other, I can't list them. But we'll do an episode on community property eventually, because that comes up a lot in this kind of stuff, especially the collection side, who actually owns what money. So that's the answer to today's questions. Question, what if my spouse owes the IRS? Remember, if you found this helpful, subscribe to the channel. Ask us a question below. We're usually pretty good about answering questions. We'll answer them quick. We'll even, pump out an extra video sometimes if it's a good question. I tend to batch these and kind of release them over time. You'll probably notice my clothes don't always change between episodes. I own that. But I'm busy, and this is kind of something fun I do when I like to get good information out to people. But I don't always have time to, do it on the day that it gets released. But if we see a good question, we'll break the cycle a little bit, and we'll put out one on a random day maybe. If it's a good question, I'll hop on here, power it up, and upload it. And then you'll see that quick. We'll even give you a shout out if you want. If you don't want it, we won't. I know some people are kind of, depending on what the question is, you might not want people to necessarily know that you're having that issue. And, of course, in that case, we'll, absolutely respect your privacy around that. But other than that, that's pretty much the whole show at this point. And then next week we'll be answering the question, what is injured spouse? So we talked a little bit about what that is, and we talked a little bit about kind of what goes into that. We mentioned the 8379. We'll talk a little bit about what injured spouse is, and then a little bit about innocent spouse as well too, because people get those confused. So we explained what injured spouse was here. We'll talk about innocent spouse. Those are two different things that you don't want to get confused when you file them. If you file the wrong one, the IRS is known for giving no leeway around the fact that you filed the wrong one if you run out of time to make that claim later. So you really want to make sure you get that right. And then the last kind of question for you guys down in the comment section is, should they be able to, do you think the IRS should be able to take that money? Do you think that, other people should be able to take that money from, your spouse's portion automatically without kind of any input from you? You are filing kind of jointly together. So some people might say that, it makes sense that they can take that money. Other people might have differing opinions. And I know lots of people are on both sides of that, but I'd really like to hear what you guys think about it. That's all. And I'll see you next week again, where we're going to talk about injured spouse and innocent spouse and kind of the difference between the two of those so that you don't mess them up and lose your claim. So that's all for this week. This is Jared signing out.